We're good.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the July 24th meeting of the Hubbard County Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment. Start the meeting off, I'll read the meeting procedure. All persons in attendance at Planning Commission Board of Adjustment meetings are expected to comply with the following meeting procedure. Thank you in advance for helping make this a manageable meeting. Copies of agenda item materials are available for public viewing on the table located at the back of the meeting room. These materials are not to leave the table so that others in attendance may also view them. Please turn phones to vibrate or off during the meeting and conduct any sidebar conversations outside of the meeting room. Interruption or other interference with the orderly conduct of the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment will not be allowed. Defamatory or abusive remarks are always out of order. Disruptive persons will be removed from the meeting. The chair may terminate a speaker's privilege of address if, after being called to order, the speaker persists in improper conduct or remarks. Written material concerning agenda items must be submitted to the Environmental Services Department by 3:30 p.m. on the Wednesday immediately prior to the meeting date. Written materials will not be accepted after this deadline or at the meeting because the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment will not have sufficient time to review them prior to the meeting. Such material must state the agenda item for which it is being submitted and the name and address of the submitting party. Planning Commission business is conducted first, followed by Board of Adjustment business. The chair will call the meeting to order and explain the meeting procedure. The chair will read each item into the record and ask the applicants to come forward to the presenter's table, state his or her name and addresses for the record, and explain his or her request. The Planning Commission Board of Adjustment will then discuss the agenda item with the applicant. The chair will then ask for public comment on the agenda item. To facilitate an orderly, efficient meeting, there is a 3-minute speaking time limit per speaker per agenda item unless the chair allows an additional time. The chair may terminate the speaker's privilege of address if, after being called to order, the speaker persists in improper conduct or remarks. When the chair recognizes a speaker, he or she may approach the audience podium and microphone, state his or her full name and address for the record, and write such on the speaker log, and then share his or her comments. The audience podium microphone must be used by the recognized speaker because the meeting is recorded. A member of the public may not donate his or her speaking time to another speaker. A speaker should state his or her comments and address the issue, not the applicants. All comments are to be directed toward the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment. Please do not repeat comments already made by previous speakers. The chair reserves the right to ask a group with similar comments to appoint a spokesperson. If written comments have been submitted to the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment, please do not read them aloud during the meeting as they are already part of the record and copies thereof have been given to the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment. After everyone wanting to speak on an agenda item has done so, the chair will close the public comment period on the agenda item. No further public comment will be taken after this point. The chair will give the applicant an opportunity to address issues raised during public comment. The Planning Commission Board of Adjustment will then continue its discussion on the agenda item and the chair will entertain a motion on it. The Planning Commission Board of Adjustment may make a motion to pass, deny, or table the item. Once a motion is made and seconded, the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment will develop findings of fact for conditional use permit and variance applications and then vote on the motion. Once a vote is taken on an agenda item, the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment will move on to the next agenda item. Meetings commence at 6 p.m. and continue until all agenda items have been heard or until 10 p.m. No new agenda items shall be considered after 9:45 p.m. Planning Commission Board of Adjustment may, at its discretion, continue an item that is on the floor at 10 p.m. Any remaining agenda items shall be continued to another date time, preferably the immediately following Tuesday at 6 p.m. and no further public notice will be provided for such a meeting continuation. The Planning Commission Board of Adjustment, through the chair, may modify these procedures prior to a meeting or an agenda item. Okay, so we're going to move on to Planning Commission business. I believe we have no approval of minutes from last month. No old business, so we're going to move on to new business, which is a discussion of the Shoreland Management Ordinance, professional service business use category for any potential amendments. So we'll get started with that. Eric, before we start having this discussion, we're simply looking for recommendations. Is that correct, for any amendments that we might suggest? Is that what we're really doing here?
Eric speaking. Yeah, the county board recently received some input where some folks would like to operate a professional services business that would fall within a natural environment lake classification area, and the ordinance currently doesn't allow that. On recreational development and general development lake classes, such a use is allowed through a conditional use permit. And so the board talked about different things. One would be leaving it as is and having the individual in this particular situation explore other locations that would be outside of shoreland, or they also talked about amending the ordinance and seeing that as a viable option for allowing the use. And so that's where, at least with the NE class, I had mentioned to the board when they were discussing this that potentially we could look at allowing that type of use in tiers 2 and 3 on natural environment lakes. So then they're located 400 feet away from the lake, and that would kind of protect the NE class objectives on the immediate lake itself, as well as the first ring around the lake. So that would be a possibility, but basically the board, with that background, wanted to see what the planning commission's thoughts were, and then have the commission develop a recommendation as to what you feel would be appropriate to do, and then I'll report that back to the board.
Okay, this is Mark speaking again. Eric, just one more question. In your report, your staff report, you noted that you could recall 2 CUPs that had been granted for professional service uses, and you named what they were. For my clarification, why is that not a road we would just go down for this? Could you explain that to me?
Yeah, in this particular case, what the party is wanting to do is operate a professional services use within 1,000 feet of a natural environment lake, and the ordinance prohibits that type of use on a natural environment lake at present.
So those 2 CUPs that were issued, there was nothing that they were violating in the ordinance when they were granted?
Correct. Those were on recreational development lake.
Okay, so let's open it up to the board then and see if anybody has any thoughts or input that they could give us here.
This is Veronica speaking. I have a question for Eric.
Veronica, my hearing aids are at home tonight, so could you
Yep.
speak into the microphone
Yep.
or speak up? I'm sorry.
Sure. This is Veronica speaking. I just had a question for Eric. This particular property, does it have a residential use on it as well, or it's strictly business at the time, or open to that?
The property in this particular case is a former commercial golf course.
Okay.
What did he say it's on?
He said it was a former commercial golf course, this property that we're discussing.
Is it commercial golf?
Was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else?
This is Ken. My thoughts. First of all, I don't want to start opening up Pandora's box and expose our natural environment lakes to people now being able to start businesses on them. And with that in mind, I think that well, 2 aspects. I think the staff report indicated that we may want to change the river segment classification to an N, which I am in agreement with. And as far as the public waters classification for the NE lakes, I've been thinking that maybe make it a conditional one, a C, with some conditions. And if you look at the definitions for natural environment lakes and for river segments, they're a lot the same. And if I recall, river segments, the shoreland zone is only 500 feet. And so what I was thinking is that if we made this S category, we could apply some conditions. One of them, which to me would be that a conditional use permit would have to be issued, so we can address the things of parking and noise and neighbors and things like that. They usually get addressed, but with a couple of conditions. One being that it be more than 500 feet, because that would put it consistent with the river segments, because you could do, business or whatever outside the 500 feet in a river segment. And the other thing is that, just to be a little more restrictive, that we ensure that this natural environment lake, if it's gonna have a professional service, all structures, setbacks, et cetera, are conforming. So you'd have a lot that has no non-conforming structures, setbacks, et cetera, and it would be at least 500 feet, along with then a conditional use permit that would address the whatever unique situations exist. So that's my thoughts after thinking about it. I don't know how everybody else views it, but there are, if you look at the home occupation and the home extended use, there are a lot of conditions. And I tried to look at some of those and think, should we apply some? And the answer I might defer to environmental services to look through those and maybe would want to add a few of those to the conditions. But beyond that, so that's my thoughts.
This is Tim speaking. I agree with you, Ken. I have a question for Eric. How did you come up with the 400? Was that because of tier measurement?
Yep. Tier 2 starts at 400 feet. The first tier is from the OHW to the 400-foot setback.
Yeah. It's 267 for a,
Yeah.
okay.
Myself, I understand exactly what you're saying because the
Yeah.
river I'm on, it's
Yeah.
500 off that. But I agree with the 400 because of people using existing, and it gives that little buffer there. So
Yeah.
but I do agree with the going with the CUP for sure.
Yeah, this is Veronica speaking. I feel the same. I'm in agreement with staff with both of these suggestions, especially with the management goals for the river section. The remote river management district is established to preserve the wilderness and near wilderness settings. So putting that to not allowed, that is perfect for that part. And I agree with you and Ken as far as the natural environment lake. If we do put any changes on it or recommend any changes, I would go with the conditional use permit or the special as well, with one of the two setbacks, either everything outside of tier 1 or at least the 500-foot setback, and have the performance standards developed as well.
This is Mike. I guess I would echo those comments. In agreement, it should be a conditional use permit on the any lakes.
Okay, and this is Mark. I guess, Mike, you make a little bit of sense to me on the 400, so I guess I'm in concurrence with that. My feeling on that is I would stay with that recommendation myself also. Anybody else?
So what do you think we collectively are proposing? Change the river segment to an N. And then for professional services, just make it a C, meaning it's a conditional use permit. And assume that all the things we'll do with a conditional use permit would apply. And would we want, how do we put the condition in there about the 400 feet tier? A conditional use permit, just as a thing, is no guarantee that we would make sure it was outside the 400 feet. We can, 400 or 500 feet. I picked 500 because it was very consistent with rivers. But we need to somehow, I think, put a condition in that it can't be closer than, it can't be in the first tier, if that's what you're proposing. How do we do that, other than making the category an S? So you need an S to then have additional conditions. If you look at section 402, it's just full of like 13 or 14 different uses that has special conditions. We'd have to make it a C that required a conditional use permit and then have a 400-foot restriction on it. Am I making sense? Yeah. Because there's no other way to put the 400-foot or tier 1 or 500 feet, whatever you want, unless you make it a S. The permit, an S category. Follow what I'm saying? Look at page 27, section 401. C is for conditional use permit, S is permitted under the conditions that are then attached in section 402, yeah. So we're in agreement to make the change for river segments. We're willing to remove the N or are not permitted for the NE lakes. Is that where we're at? Mm-hmm. So it's a matter of whether we want a C or an S, and then how do we restrict the to beyond first tier? Because if you look at section 402, like for instance, churches have to be in the third or fourth tier, and has to be non-riparian. So you put those conditions in section 402.
Right. This is Veronica speaking, Ken. We can still place a performance standard on this for any conditional use permit application that falls under the any category, that it has to be in tier 2 and in tier 3. We can put that statement in there, or we can suggest the amendment that.
In the ordinance?
Correct. Yep, under the performance
So
standards.
you'd
We
have
can
to-
add one more sentence in there that says any conditional use permit on an NE lake
Yeah, but
has
you-
to fall in tier 2 or tier 3.
But you'd have to create a section 14 or something that would have that condition in it.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So therefore, it's got to be an S category.
Ken, if I may, the church category has a asterisk by it.
Yeah,
And then if you look down below, there's a note that says what that asterisk
Yes.
indicates, and says they must meet the performance standards that are applicable in section 402, so we could do the same with
Yeah,
the
you-
any class. And then we would just say in the performance standards section that it can only be in tiers 2 and 3.
This is
well, I
Veronica
think
speaking.
that's what I'm proposing. You go to that section 10, I think it is, for
Yep, I was just
for
explaining.
churches.
We'd
So you
use
need a
that,
section 14, because we are at 13. Would you put a C there and put an asterisk on it, and not an S?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I thought it needed an S in order to, oh no, okay, I see, there are asterisks on Cs, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be a C with an asterisk and a section 14. That means it's a conditional use permit, and there would just be one statement in it then that said that it has to be beyond tier 1. Okay, I'm okay with that.
And before we would make any recommendation with a motion for such, I would just recommend to the chair, in case there's somebody in the public that would like to provide comment on the matter, that we could entertain that.
Okay, so let's open up for public comment. You have anybody? And seeing none, we'll close that public comment. And is this,
I have nothing, I'm the owner of that building, so these are the people that want to buy it, I guess you might want to say.
are you wanting to make comment?
No, I don't know what to say, Eric.
That's fine. I just saw you and wanted to make sure that if you wanted to say something, you could.
Fine job, so.
Okay, okay, so nothing for the record that you want to say? Okay, okay, so seeing no one else, I'll close that public comment. And Eric, is this something that we're actually going to be voting on?
As far as a motion for a recommendation to the county board, yes.
Okay, and is everybody clear on the items that we are recommending here? Would we need somebody to reread those into the record before we make a motion?
If we want to make a formal motion,
Yep. So-
okay, I'll make it.
Okay,
Make a motion that we make a recommendation to the county commissioners that the professional services use in section 401 of the Shoreland Management Ordinance, that the all river segments classification be changed to an N, a non-permitted, and that the classification for for natural environment lakes be changed to conditional use permit, and that in section 402, a condition will be set up that restricts the professional business services to be greater than 400 feet, outside of Tier 1, in case Tier 1 ever changes, outside of Tier 1. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
okay. Do we have a second on that?
This is Mike, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Ken with conditions and a second by Mike, so I'm going to take a vote here. Timothy, how do you vote?
This is Timothy, I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
This is Ken, I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
This is Mike, I vote aye.
Veronica, how do you vote?
Veronica, I vote aye.
This is Mark, I vote aye. Okay, we've got a motion passed, so moving on now. Closes our planning commission work. We'll be moving on to Board of Adjustment. And let's see, we've got approval of the minutes from the June 26th meeting. Anybody have any thing to note on those minutes, or are we looking for, ready to make an approval or a motion?
This is Mike, I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Go ahead.
This is Mark, I'll second it. So we have a motion by Mike to approve and a second by myself. Timothy, how do you vote?
This is Timothy, I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
This is Ken, I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
This is Mike, I vote aye.
Veronica, how do you vote?
This is Veronica, I vote aye.
This is Mark, I vote aye. It's passed, okay, so we're gonna move on to some old business here. We're looking at variance application 37-V-22 by James and Leslie Lila, part of Government Lot 2, Section 23, Township 141, Range 35, Arago Township on Potato Lake, a recreational development lake, parcel 02.23.01500. Applicants are requesting a variance from sections 502.2 and 503 and 702 and 902 of the Shoreland Management Ordinance for a proposed addition to a non-conforming accessory structure located in a bluff impact zone and for fill excavation in a bluff impact zone. Do we have the applicants here? If you could come up to the table here. Your name, address, and what you want to do.
You want the property address or my permanent?
Permanent address we'll take.
Okay. Name is James Lilla, Lilla. My permanent address is 2151 Crestview Drive in Excelsior, Minnesota, 55331.
Okay. Okay,
And I have Matt Murray here with me.
okay. Okay, so if you could just give us a brief overview of what you want to do here, and we'll see if the board has any questions.
I don't know how, I don't think you expect me to go back over prior ground. Basically, we're following up on the tabling of a motion or of my application that was first presented to you last November. At that time, this process was new to me, and I've had quite an education because I was not aware of how much detail I needed at that time. I knew we had some grading issues, but I did not recognize it. But we were going to go through this sooner or later anyway, and it's worked out, I think, to everyone's advantage. So thanks to Matt. Basically, I've wanted to add to my garage space a little higher, a little bigger unit. The area in question is all asphalt right now, so the plan that I looked at all involves dealing with surface area that's already impervious. Most of that drainage, as far as we can tell just by eyeballing it, tends to be south towards the bluff. And the proposed construction is in the 30-foot radius of the end of the bluff by the definitions, I guess, used by the board. So the charge or the question that rose at the first meeting was, what's going to happen to that water and where's it going to go when the structure is added? What impact will it have on the bluff or erosion or any other part of the property, I guess, as far as erosion is concerned. And also the added concern of westward movement in particular, because I'm concerned for the neighbor's property on the west, which sits lower than mine. In a nutshell, with Matt's guidance here, we followed up. It took time, and that's why we're 8 months later coming back with this. But he put together a grading plan that involves taking up a large percentage of all of the asphalt that sits on the front of the west and southwest side of that area in question, to regrade it in a way that would allow me to have a garage addition with the first floor elevation 1 foot lower than the existing garage that fits the contour of the property, and really couldn't see any advantage to trying to match. It's a grading problem beyond the confines of the garage more than it is at what level exactly the garage addition floor is. But the grading plan is designed to not only mitigate it, but I'll say significantly improve, I think, water flow as far as the lake, or as far as the bluff is concerned, and even as far as any movement of water to the west of the neighbor's property. Basically, it's lowering the main portion of the asphalt to take the water north and a bit to the west, to the northwest, and drain it into what I call a teardrop or center island between our driveways. So it takes it out of play not only for the bluff but for the neighbors' concerns. And then there is what I would call a dividing line. It's basically a line between the northwest corner of the addition to the center of the takeoff point that allows us to exit our property to get onto a trail to get down to the lakefront, which is more than 150 feet away. But as an added precaution against water having a way to move west or anywhere we don't want it to move, the plan includes adding a curb and gutter along the west wall and the south, or west edge and the south edge of the property, so that if the grade alone doesn't divert it as we expect it will, the curb would be a further impediment for the water to travel, either to the west or to the south in a way we didn't want to. We did add an addendum since November in the course of looking at the property. Matt correctly acknowledged that there's a retaining wall on the south side, the bluff side of my old garage that's in poor repair, made of timbers and beams and such. And I hadn't specifically asked to include it, but it'd be, I would like to include it, and I've asked to have that made as a formal addendum to the plan. If there's going to be construction done, it would be an ideal time to put in a wall with foundation slightly higher, slightly lower than the first floor elevation of that existing garage, and with a better cover on it for still keeping the impervious area, but not be subject to the kind of degradation that timbers have. It also help, the whole project would help shore up the southwest corner of the existing garage, where there, at some point in the past, has been some undermining of that corner. I think it's been handled by the asphalt that's there, but it would be aesthetically better and just better all the way around to have that improved. So that's a secondary benefit of what we propose. I think, hopefully that's an overview. Matt, do you want to clarify anything from me? Did I miss something?
Guess that depends on if the planning commission has any questions or not. I know the neighbors here, his main concern is construction activities affecting the runoff and causing water damage on his property. I understand right now the garage floor gets wet from time to time, and right now it appears that his garage floor is lower than the finished grade adjacent to it. So this plan, the proposal is the curb would intercept any runoff towards his property. Obviously, we can't guarantee that he'll never have a wet floor, simply because the nature of the height of his floor relative to his adjacent grade, but this plan will ensure that there's no additional runoff resulting from the construction that will be going towards his property.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask you, just because I've got it right here, and this was submitted to us. So I know I had spoke with you out at the site about finalizing, and this is, I'm presuming.
Yeah, the hip,
what
yeah.
you're
I've drawn various things over the time, and a hip roof has always been my preferred structure or configuration. Let's say the MCON people, it was a very short meeting I had with them just to kind of see about feasibility and such, and they had no problems. He popped off a couple of diagrams that were, or pictures that were better than mine, and that, yes, the hip roof, the 1 foot lower first floor elevation, the floor elevation for that compared to the existing garage, which is, and let's see what else was there to be about that. I think that's it. What I missed when I submitted documents was that he'd put the footprint of the foundation on one of the mappings, and it's correct to make the foundation 16 feet wide at the front and 24 feet to the front to back, which matches the front to back distance of the existing garage. He had drawn in lines for the ridge line for a gabled roof, and I missed that when I submitted it. That was just part of a quick way of getting a computer-generated picture for you folks.
Yep, no, that's fine. Okay, anybody at the board here have any questions?
This is Mike, and not so much a question. I think you've answered everything and brought to us exactly what we asked for. When I look at the plan and on the site visit, it vastly improves water flow for the entire property, both how it affects the lake and the neighbor. Right, you can't guarantee anything, but just the amount of rainfall that will fall on this piece of property now and where it goes, I think is exactly what we asked for in that stormwater plan. Catching the foundation was, I think, an added bonus, because would that affect the lake? It certainly could, but it certainly would affect you, and hearing you wanting to do it all at once is very good. So I'm in support of this proposal.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody else?
Just for reference, what's the distance between where the lake access curb is to the property line? You know how far?
20-plus feet, just rough scaling it here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's at least, yeah, I would say it's at least that. I don't want to quote a number for sure because I don't have that in front of me. One of the advantages of it was important, but it was as a part of the surveying, is that Matt was able to establish, the definite boundary lines of our properties, which were unclear to me in the past. So I was comfortable that up until then I was not sure where I could or should be able to put a road, but I would make every effort to. I mean, I know it can be made well within the boundary.
The answer
Yes.
is 20-plus feet. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. I'm sure it's all of that.
This is Tim speaking. I just have a question out of curiosity. If the property in its existing state, how much difference percentage-wise do you think you're flowing it northward now from where it was running towards the lake for this new plan? Just estimate, approximate.
I'd say 50%.
Yeah,
I
I
thought it
think-
was even more myself.
I think he's being very cautious and rightfully so. The way I would eyeball it myself, just looking at the plan, if you drew a line from the southwest corner of the existing, northwest corner of the existing garage across to the middle of the access point, that becomes kind of the new divide for the properties. And if you think how much water would fall on that, on the garage, which would now be in place of the impervious asphalt, and let's say all of that went south towards the lake, which it certainly does now, that's the most it would be, and then everything north of that line that we just mentioned is a larger area, and therefore I'd expect it to have more rainfall, and we would expect that, pretty much all of that is expected to go into the island. So it's a significant improvement in my thinking.
Okay. This is Ken. Oh, maybe you want to do
Yeah,
public comment.
I'm gonna open up for public comment. And seeing none, we'll close public comment. Go ahead, Ken.
Mark, there was a gentleman that raised his.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I didn't see you. If you want to step up to the podium here with the microphone, and we got public comment still open, I'm sorry. And if you go up to that podium there, and I need you to sign in.
Quick question, or the other day I was at the meeting. I'm the bad guy that lives down the hill.
Okay, before you go further, could we have your name and address and sign in there? And then you can say what you have to say.
Sign in here,
Oh,
and then state your name and address for the record.
okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt.
Anyhow, I was driving down the road and do my best thinking that way, but I come up with this curb thing is gonna solve all problems, and we all went on about a business. Well, what is a curb? Now, to me, a curb is something like you would see out here downtown that's yay by yay. What's to say you couldn't just have a little windrow of asphalt down the edge of the driveway and call that your curb, and that snowplow is just gonna eat that alive. That's, after that afternoon, I bothered Eric. No, I stopped back in just to get somebody else's opinion, and I was lucky enough to, Eric ended up being the victim. Thank you very much. But, a curb to me means one thing, a curb to somebody else is just some little edge.
Okay.
So is there a spec on this?
Now, on the drawing,
On the
It specifies the height of the,
Dimensions of the curb.
We gave some options, but it's either a 6-inch gutterless.
Yeah, okay, see, in my mind, that's what a curb looks like. So that's my only
We specified that detail right.
Oh, we did? Okay. Then I'm done.
Hold on, Ken. Hold on. Okay, while he's finishing up there, anybody else for public comment? And seeing nobody else, we'll close public comment. Anybody have any discussion on that curb?
Could we, before the gentleman sits down, if you could ask him again to please state his name. and
Oh,
address.
yes, I'm sorry. Could you state to the microphone your name,
Oh.
just verbally?
microphone's in front of you right there.
Oh, there's the microphone. Marvin Sorensen, I live at 14079 Hummingbird Drive, down the road, or next door on the west.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Good-
you.
Good, Eric?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we've got public comment closed. Anybody else here with any questions? Okay.
I was, the staff report raises an item which I think is important, and that is that we'd like to make sure that the water plan, grading plan, et cetera, is done concurrent or shortly thereafter when you build the garage, and that it doesn't go on forever. And I think, Eric, are all land use permits required to be completed in a year? Okay, so that would say a year from when the permit is issued. So that once you issue the permit, he has to build the garage and complete this grading plan within a year.
Eric speaking, the board could certainly do that or give additional time if you felt it appropriate for the stormwater plan, but having some deadline for that to be completed would be, I think, a good thing.
I would like to make sure that the garage doesn't get built and then it goes on for extended period of time because the runoff situation would probably get worse. So you would say that should be a condition that we would want to put into it, that the garage and water drainage plan be completed within a year of the land use permit being granted.
Yes, that, or if you felt more or less time was appropriate
Okay.
for the grading to be completed. But some date that we can say for sure it must be done by that point.
I guess I was lumping the two together, that someone else can figure out maybe what the words are, but I don't want to see it in a worse situation for any period of time once you start digging up and building the garage.
Well, is it appropriate for, this is Jim speaking, if it's appropriate
You
to,
can go ahead.
to
Go
respond?
ahead. Yep.
I never considered the possibility of staggering it, at least in that way. If anything, I said to myself, I wonder if I had it all graded and all that work completed and then built the garage. You know, but you know, I'm a guy who thinks about every angle of what could happen.
Yeah.
But they're inextricably linked as far as I'm concerned. My attention would be once the project started and they're going to be tearing up asphalt just to get in the foundation for the new garage. So I'd have to build, you know, something then, and there'd be no advantage to me to wait. I would ask, I guess, for I don't know, just the way things move kind of slowly in my world and sometimes in the contractor's world and everything else, that if I stipulate that the project is a project in its entirety, we've pretty much lost this year's construction season. I probably could get, you know, in line for something next year and make it happen, but rather than be under some duress, rather than a year, would you consider 2 years? When I first started the process, this isn't important, but somebody said 5 years. I asked, once this is approved, what's the deal? You know, I mean, what would be the limits? And I was told 5 years. That is not a deal breaker for me, but 1 year seems a little bit tight, just because of the way my life seems to be in slow motion on a lot of these things.
Okay, anybody ready to make a motion?
This is Veronica. I'm just going to give him some clarification real
Okay.
quick. So yes, you do have 5 years if this variance is approved for you to build the garage. You do have 5 years, a sunset clause, to build that garage. The point that we're making is that if the minute that we're trying to validate here for that timeline is the minute you pull that garage permit to build that accessory structure, you know, the garage, then we want to put a deadline so that the asphalt and the stormwater management plan is fully implemented. So if you don't start, because I agree, this year is pretty much over for building for many people because the contractors are already booked out. Chances are you're not going to get your garage built until next year. So when you pull that garage permit, then I would be in line with saying with these gentlemen that yes, you need to have maybe a December 2024 deadline, is that you have your garage and your or at least your stormwater management plan completed
Sure.
and implemented and fully used.
Sure.
Like you said, you're going to have to do that first before you start building your garage.
This is procedure for me again, because I wasn't sure that you were going to say that if this is approved, that the meter starts running today. You know, I didn't want, that was sounded pretty tight.
The meter starts running as far as your variance date, yes, but that's 5 years. But once you pull the permit and once you start that stormwater management plan, we would like to see it shrunk down to a certain time frame so that we don't have this whole big workup for 5 years.
I would like to have it be shorter than that for sure. Thank you, yes, for clarification.
Yes, and this is Veronica again. I do appreciate you taking the time from the November meeting with our feedback as well and supplying the stormwater management plan from a certified stormwater professional, and that does make a difference. Like everyone else has echoed, even though we can't control all of the water that goes on the neighbor's yard, but you are controlling the new proposed structure that you're building. And then again, some, like we mentioned, how much more is it gonna take off to the north side? So you've done a great job doing that, and I appreciate your going that extra effort.
Thank you. Credit goes to Mike, or Matt, I'm sorry. Mike too, maybe.
The only other condition, this is Veronica still, that I would like to place on there is the applicant did already say he was going to put gutters on there, but I would still just put that as condition number 2, that gutters be installed on the new proposed garage. Just to make sure it's covered.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
If you're ready, I'm ready to make a motion.
Go ahead.
This is Mike. I make the motion that we approve this variance with the following conditions: that the stormwater plan be fully implemented within the year in which the land use permit for the garage addition is valid. And that gutters, the second condition be that the gutters be added to the new addition as per the drawing that was submitted.
And the staff report.
And I adopt the staff facts.
Okay,
This is Veronica, I second that.
okay, thank you. Okay, we have a motion by Mike with the conditions he's placed and accepted the staff's findings of facts. A second by Veronica. Timothy, how do you vote?
This is Timothy, I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
This is Ken, I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
This is Mike, I vote aye.
Veronica, how do you vote?
This is Veronica, I vote aye.
This is Mark, I vote aye. Your motion is passed. You'll get a letter from ESO informing you of that, but you're all set to go.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so next we have variance, new business, variance application 18-V-23 by Timothy and Marcia McFarland, part of Government Lot 7, Section 30, Township 142, Range 33, Thorpe Township on Big Mantrap Lake, a recreational development lake, parcel 26.30.01400, applicants are requesting an after-the-fact variance from section 502.2 of the Shoreland Management Ordinance for a residence located within the 100-foot ordinary high water mark structure setback. I have the applicant here. If you could just give us your name and address, permanent address for the record, and
Yep.
then,
My name is Timothy McFarland, and my address is 7491 Ontario Boulevard, Eden Prairie, Minnesota, 55344.
tell us just briefly what you're asking here.
This started because I wanted to put a fireplace on the west end of my cabin. It's approximately a 2-foot by 8-foot bump out, something that I had to be doing with Thorpe Township. Eric caught it and sent their department out, and they measured, and by today's standards, they're indicating that that point of our cabin is 96 feet from the ordinary high water. So we would like a variance to allow us to build a fireplace on the end of the cabin.
Okay. Okay. Any questions by the board or comments? No? While we're thinking that, let me just quick open up for public comment. And seeing none, I'll close public comment. Again, does anybody have any questions, or is anybody ready to make a motion on this one?
This is Veronica speaking. I just have a couple of comments. It appears that, the applicant was not the actual member that rebuilt the construction back in 1995 or 1996. It appears that the house was maybe not oriented parallel to the shoreline, so that little 4-foot section did not get placed properly. There is also that 22-foot of rise with that 23% slope between the house and the ordinary high water mark, so that steep slope may have also contributed to the prior owner's mismeasuring. So I am supportive of the condition, of the application. I would go with the staff's recommendation on the condition as well, that if and when the house is ever rebuilt in the future, then it must fully comply with the 100-foot setback.
Thank you, Veronica. Anybody else with?
Concur what she said.
And I would agree with pretty much everything Veronica said. Anybody for a motion?
This is Mike. I'll make the motion that we approve with the condition that if a new structure is ever built, that it fully complies with the 100-foot ordinary high water mark setback, and accept the staff findings of fact.
And this is Mark. I'll second that motion. And Mike has given us the condition that he's placed and accepted staff findings of facts. So we'll take a vote here. Timothy, how do you vote?
This is Timothy, I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
This is Ken, I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
This is Mike, I vote aye.
Veronica, how do you vote?
This is Veronica. I vote aye.
This is Mark. I vote aye. Your motion's passed. You'll receive a letter from Eric's office.
Perfect.
You're all set.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have variance application 19-V-23 by Kelly and Traci Weible, part of Government Lot 7 and part of Government Lot 8, Section 33, Township 144, Range 32, Hart Lake Township on Garfield Lake, a recreational development lake, parcel 10.33.00550. Applicants are requesting a variance from section 507.3 of the Shoreland Management Ordinance for a proposed boardwalk to exceed the 4-foot maximum allowed width. We have the applicants here. If you could come up to the table. Just your name, permanent address, and then tell us what you want to do.
Hey, Kelly Weible, 30009 Pickerel Road, LaPorte. We're looking for a 6-foot wide, or variance for 6-foot wide boardwalk
Okay,
to cross our wetland area.
okay. Okay, anybody with questions on this boardwalk?
This is Mike. Why do you want 6 feet? Why is not 4 foot adequate?
Mostly to get an ATV to be able to pull the dock and lift out and to get a riding lawnmower across. It's our only access.
How would you use a ATV?
A winch on the front of the winch on the front of the ATV.
So you're asking us to go from the standard 4 feet to a 6 foot to accommodate a winch to pull in the dock?
A winch, a golf cart to haul stuff back and forth, lawnmower to mow grass up there.
It's our only access to the lake.
This
Anybody
is-
else?
Yeah.
This is Ken. You've not had a professional wetland survey done over that area.
We have not yet.
And I bring that up in the fact that it's not obvious to me that there's 68 feet of wetland. And you may be influencing the outcome based on making that assumption, because if it was 10 or 15 feet, it would be a lot less impact.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that when I walk to the, let me think, south end to your property, that is a much shorter distance.
Yeah.
Why do you pick the place that it is? And I know the Soil and Water Conservation District said you should put it at the north end, and I don't understand
why that
that
either, other
because
than-
Don't know.
that seemed worse, and so on. So
It's
I-
kind of even with our dock, I
the
guess.
length and location appear to penalize you a little bit.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know why. We, mostly for us, it was just because it's straight with the dock right now.
I'm sorry,
It's straight with the dock right now.
yeah.
Or it's
okay.
in line with the dock
The dock.
right now. That was about the only reason for us, I think.
And we can easily drive across it. It's not wet, or not that wet that
Yeah.
we've noticed. We can drive across it.
So the question is, why not just leave it like it is or do 4 feet? If occasionally, just a couple times a year, you need to drive your vehicle over there to be able to help with your dock, why not just leave it like it is?
We weren't sure that we were able to drive across a wetland, a supposed wetland. We were told it was a wetland.
Okay, so you're not, yes, all right, you can't drive across it.
That's what we were told. But there was a variance giving us the ability to clear a 6-foot path to the lake to
Not a
get to it.
Not a variance,
Or not-
a vegetative alteration.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Clear it to go across there.
Yeah, your ordinance right. You're allowed a 6-foot swath, but the boardwalk can only be 4. Okay,
I
yeah.
think that was filed in 2018.
Okay, I'm gonna stop for a second. We're gonna open up for public comment. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Anybody else? Questions, comments?
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I have a question, please.
Go ahead, Veronica.
Yeah. Eric, can you please pull up on the map and show us what the layers are with the wetlands? So it appears just by this visual that we have on screen that the wetlands does go in about half of that property. And while we were out during the lot views, I asked you, how often it dries out, and you said after a rain, it dries out within a few hours. Is that correct?
Within a day, yeah.
Yep.
Within a day.
And you also mentioned, or you pointed out to where you did drive across towards the lower end where there's potentially no wetland. Because most of the wetland is north of your property and it goes all throughout the rest of it, or correct, on the other properties. I'm so seeing that you do have other options that you can get to the lake access without going through the wetland, I'm not leaning towards your 6-foot boardwalk. I would still be saying, I know you have something that's smaller than 4 feet. It was obviously, maybe it's like 3 feet wide, maybe 3.5, but it's not 4 feet wide. So I'm still leaning towards the standard 4-foot section because you do have an area where you can get across. And as you've mentioned, it's not very wet, and if you go south, then you're not in the wetlands at all, where you could possibly drive or make it a different path. Not two paths, but a different area that you can utilize. I do have a question for you. Going back to your dock and your lift, where do you currently put your dock and lift? Where did you put it this last winter?
It was our first year.
This is
We just put it on the roadbed there. Is that what you mean, where we store it?
where
or-
you store it.
Yeah, right on that roadbed.
On the road there.
Yeah.
So
The
you,
old, the old roadbed, yeah.
okay.
Eric, can you go back to the drawing? I hadn't seen that before. Is your property line the lower red line there?
Yes, yes.
So you have a considerable distance, quote, that's not declared as wetland.
From what we saw. We didn't know that we could do something for sure. We just thought this was the route to go.
You, back to
Even-
Veronica's
even
point,
if
you have options. You could build, you could build and or drive to the lake without going across a wetland at all, based on this drawing.
As long as we can go by that map,
We
yeah.
can go by that map and not what soil conservation says.
This
Brandon.
this is Tim
Brett?
speaking. I didn't think it looked like much of a wetland. It has to be the weakest class of wetland there ever is for the trees and vegetation that's there.
Yeah.
There's ferns,
Yeah.
but there's black dirt under them ferns.
Yeah.
And that's why there's black dirt, is because of the ferns. So
Okay.
we know if we let him just drive across there, it's gonna be, when they take the next pictures, it's gonna be black two stripes from a four-wheeler going across the yard.
Okay,
And trenches and ruts.
okay.
So I'm not against a 6 foot because of the existing road.
It would
The
be-
whole reason we've ever been against the boardwalks is mainly because it was in a bog that would create a waterway
Yeah.
underneath of it, a floating bog. So myself,
Your point is, why create another place when there's minimal impact of 6 foot where it's there?
and myself, I'm not, if it's wood, it doesn't matter to me if it's wood or if it's steel, because just from the vegetation that's there, it's not going across the bog like we did on Rice Lake.
Yeah.
We were mostly going by what Brandon recommended from the soil and water. Is what he recommended doing, I guess, right? That's why we were pushing toward that.
Anybody else with comments? Anybody ready to make a motion?
I'll give it a try.
Okay, Tim?
I'll make a motion to approve this application. For findings, is a variance in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls? I'd say, yes, because we are not making a trail directly to the lake. There's a natural existing road berm there, and the vegetation that's there now is upland trees and grass and ferns underneath. And number two, is the property owner proposing to use the property? Oh, we got a yes for that. I could use the staffs, but it's avoiding a rutted trail with tracking all the black dirt up out of the trail up onto the yard. Number three is the need for a variance due to circumstances unique to the property and not created by the current or prior property owners. Yes, I think that existing road creates that lower spot just because that entire property, the topography slopes there and makes that lower spot. And I don't think that would be that way without that existing road. It's all sand in there, the whole thing, and natural sand beach, so it percolates down. And I'll adopt the rest of the staff's findings.
4 and 5.
Yes, for 4 and 5.
Okay, this is Mark. I'll second your motion, Tim. So we have a motion by Tim to approve this, and he has given his findings of fact, and a second by myself, Mark. So we're going to take a vote here. Timothy, how do you vote?
This is Timothy, I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
Yeah, this is Ken, I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
This is Mike, I vote aye.
Veronica, how do you vote?
This is Veronica, I vote aye.
This is Mark, I vote aye. Your motion is passed. You get a letter from Eric's office stating as such. You're set to go. Thank you so much.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, next we have variance application 20-V-23 by Terry Sater. Excuse me. Part of Government Lot 1, Section 29, Township 140, Range 34, and part of Outlots 3 through 5, Shady Point, Section 28, Township 140, Range 34, Henrietta Township, excuse me, on Long Lake, a recreational development lake, parcel 13.44.00600. Applicant is requesting the following variances. Part 1, Section 701 of the Shoreland Management Ordinance to resume a discontinued non-conforming resort use. And Part 2, if Part 1 is approved, Section 701 of the Shoreland Management Ordinance for a proposed screen porch additions to 2 dwelling units. So we have the applicant up. If you could give us your name, address, and what you want to do.
My name is Terry Sitter. I live at 17976 Day Spring Drive, Park Rapids. And I guess I'd like to get my resort qualification back.
Okay? And
And I'm Cindy Alvin, here to help him as a friend. I've helped him write things up.
okay, all right. Eric, do I need her address? I do, okay. So Cindy, could you give us your permanent address?
105 Hobart, H-O-B as in boy, A-R-T Street, Holly, Minnesota, 56549. My last name is U-L-V as in Victor, E-N.
Okay, thank you. So, any questions or comments by the board on this application?
Well, I don't know, I guess this again, I guess based on staff report and other information, first to address the cabin screened-in area. It's not encroaching any farther than what was approved in a prior variance, just building a screened porch underneath the deck, and it meets all the setbacks, so that's all in conformance. As far as redoing the resort, COVID screwed a lot of things up, and I could see why he probably had to shut down. And I was, based on staff report and discussions, would indicate that it was just a lack of recognition that in fact he had to keep his license in place, not because he on purpose did it, but just by mistake. So given both of those, I'm personally supportive of what's being asked.
Okay, thank you, Ken. This is Mark. I concur with everything Ken just said, so I don't have any feelings different than that. Anybody else?
This is Mike. I guess I'm in concurrent, but I would recommend that in the motion that we do have the condition that this is a one-time granting, that once the resort status is back in, that 12 consecutive month provision goes back into play. So this is a one-time exception based on COVID and all the other things that took place that got us to this point.
It's been a resort for 80 years and I've run it for 26.
The point is that 6 years from now, it can't be shut down more than a year and automatic because of the variance. This is a one-time.
Right.
And it terminates at the end of this one. Okay.
6 years, I don't care.
We might, or no, not me either, somebody else might. So, That's my comments.
Okay,
Makes
I'm
sense.
gonna interrupt us for a second. I'm gonna open for public comment. And seeing none, I will close public comment. Anybody ready to make a motion on this or have further questions or comments?
This is Veronica. I'm ready for a motion if you are.
Okay, Veronica?
This is Veronica. I make a motion that we approve both parts 1 and part 2 of the application as presented. Also with a condition on the part 1 as staff report recommended, and from Mike as well, that we have a one-time allowance to resume the resort use with a 12-month provision that will continue to apply going forward from 2024 on. So once you get that resort, get back on it there. We understand COVID. And I will adopt the staff's findings of facts.
This is Mike, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Mike, Veronica, and a second by Mike. And Veronica adopted staff findings of fact, place one condition on there. And take a vote. Timothy, how do you vote?
This is Timothy, I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
This is Ken, I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
This is Mike, I vote aye.
Veronica, how do you vote?
Veronica, I vote aye.
And this is Mark, I vote aye. Your motion is passed, your application is approved. Get a letter from Eric, you're all set to go.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Eric, anything under miscellaneous?
Just as far as next month, the application deadline is next Monday, so we, as usual, don't have a whole lot of applications that have come in yet. We've got a couple conditional use permits that are working toward submittal. One would be for a proposed restaurant use, and the other would be for a campground. So those potentially could be on next month's agenda along with the usual variety of variance applications, but so far it's not looking of size, but that can all change coming down to the next Monday deadline.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments? Are you ready to make a motion to adjourn?
This is Mike, I'll make the motion, we adjourn.
This is Ken, I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion by Mike to adjourn, and a second by Ken. Timothy, how do you vote?
This is Timothy, I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
This is Mike, I vote aye.
Veronica, how do you vote?
Veronica, I vote aye.
And this is Mark, I vote aye. Meeting is adjourned.
Good job, Mike.
Thank you all for your help.